We have another big week, Luminary. This week we have our Mercury retrograde combust, our Mars entering Capricorn, Venus ending her retrograde cycle. Whew. What will you focus on this week? Welcome to the Savvy Luminary podcast, Astrology for Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Leslie Tagorda, creator of the Astrobrand Method, business astrologer, brand designer, author, and Aquarius boss woman. I help visionary spiritual entrepreneurs and impact makers like you illuminate and amplify your unique star powers so you can be the luminary you were born to be. Welcome back, Luminary, to your Sunday edition of the Business StarCast. Before we get into the astrology of the week of January 23rd to 29th of 2022, I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about reallocating energy. What I noticed during the week is that there are always themes that really come through in all of the readings that I give. And so in any week, I'll have a maximum of like 7 Astrobrand readings. And of course, at the beginning of the year, there's just like so many people coming through because we all want to know how to prepare for the upcoming year. And the theme of this week really came through is reallocating energy. I spent a lot of time with different clients at all different levels and stages of their businesses, reframing how they were pouring energy into things that were actually draining them, and then how to reallocate that energy and pour them into things that radiated them, that lit them up, that like fed and nourished the source of their energy. It's been just kind of actually really amazing to witness this kind of process of reallocating energy. And, timing wise, with the astrology coming up with Mars, our physical drive, that activation, that energy that we do need, and then Venus and all these personal planets, Venus at the very tail end of her retrograde, where we have to like revalue where we're going to pour our energy into. And then Mercury coming to a combust, that midway point of kind of like that full moon illumination, where it's the midway point of the Mercury retrograde, where everything that we want to rebuild kind of comes to a climax, or not really rebuild, but rethink with our future innovations comes to a climax. It's actually kind of a perfect metaphor how I've been seeing this idea of reallocating energy really come through, not just in myself, but in the clients that I've been seeing in their businesses. So I have a sense that this idea is going to really spark for you. I'm an Aquarius, and I've always loved Star Trek, Star Wars, and I keep coming back to the themes from Star Trek and Star Wars all the time. But I caught myself talking about Star Trek with a client about reallocating energy. And so if you're a Trekkie, you already know how groundbreaking this show has always been in all of its iterations, from its very first iteration back in the 60s and the 70s with kind of the first interracial kiss, and like bringing in actors that were not just white with a diverse cast, to the most recent iteration with Discovery, where Captain Michael Burnham, she's a Black woman and she's captain, and they're jumping in the future and they're using the mycelial network and everything. If you haven't watched it, I'm a fan. I recommend it. Even with all of its flaws, it's still like a great story, and just it gets you really thinking about what is possible in the future. But the reason why I bring back Star Trek, and maybe you already know this, in the engine, there's this piece of like technology that is like their core energy. And when they are going in warp speed, they can use these energies to take these quantum jumps and go really fast and like end up in a new place in a very short amount of time. But when they are under attack, then they have to allocate that energy to this force field. And so if they're in a battle or they're in an attack and they need to escape, they have to essentially like kind of reallocate energy back to the core engine so that they can take these quantum leaps. And so they're always shifting, the ship is always shifting its energy from attack mode to like exploration mode, attack mode to exploration mode in these different episodes. And you always hear like episodes, like in the beginning of the episodes, like Scotty saying, I can't get the engine back up, things like that. But in our business lives, in our work lives, we are constantly allocating energy and wanting to focus energy, hopefully, on the things that are allowing us to take those leaps forward and to explore and to grow. But what I'm noticing is that so many of us get stuck in this place of protection, of putting up that force field because they feel like attacks are happening, whether there are actual attacks that are happening where we're having to actually put out fires, like address like client things, or there's things happening in our businesses that we need to really take care of, or they could even be like these kinds of modes of like patterns of attacks that are not actually happening anymore. And so I recall this potent conversation that I had with a client where we were still discovering the confidence and the uniqueness of her son's superpowers. You might have heard me talk about that our sun sign and the relationships that it has and the position by house show us the what we do and shows us how we can differentiate that what we do from everybody else in our field. This one client, I was talking about just all of her unique superpowers, and she was having there was kind of like this disconnect, this gap of really her being able to see her superpowers in this way. And so she started, I looked at this, she had this really interesting square with Chiron, and she had this interesting moon Neptune. And I had this sense that there was some a deeper problem, a deeper like wound from maybe her mother's side. So I gently asked the question about the relationship that she had with her mom. And she proceeded to tell me that she had this really tumultuous relationship with her mom, and that her mom had suffered a lot of mental health. And her mom was just really not available to her from this nourishing standpoint that we think that, you know, like the divine mother to nourish us. She didn't have that. Her mom wasn't available for that. And instead she mentioned that when she was a little girl, she would use her intuition to decipher whether or not it was safe for her to enter the house at that time. And I was like, ooh, this is so interesting, because she noticed that she had this really strong intuition. And this client of mine has like a massive stellium in Scorpio. Like she has like 6 planets in Scorpio. It's really interesting. We were talking about her intuition, but how she wasn't quite yet trusting her intuition. But she mentioned that when she was in protection mode as a little child, trying to figure out whether or not she was going to go into the house, her intuition could instantly tell her whether or not it was safe. Like she could really like see and sense the energy that was happening in the house before she went into it. And I said, you know, that's super interesting, because I suspect that you have that same kind of intuition when you're actually working with your clients. But now it's really stuck in this pattern of protection mode. I was like, you're a full-grown adult now. You're not dependent on your mother. Your mother, those cycles of protecting against, you know, some kind of perceived attack, is your energy is still being used to protect you instead of using the energy to help you see your brilliance, to see your source, and to see how you're supposed to really radiate what you do so naturally well. And so we spent a lot of time actually talking about Star Trek and talking about how the crew would reallocate energy from this force field of protection and reallocate that energy back to that source of engine so that the ship could do the things that it needed to do. And once we had talked about this process of reallocating the energy, then my client was able to really reveal, oh my gosh. And she was really able to see, I could see it just spark in her eyes, all the things that we've been talking about that made her sun sign so unique, and her superpowers and the energy that she was bringing into the world so unique. she was finally able to start to tap into that energy. And I talked to her about, now, this isn't going to be hard work. It doesn't have to be hard work. This can be a quantum jump, just like that warp speed that the Star Trek Enterprise can take while it's doing a warp jump someplace else. That this doesn't have to be this long, drawn out process of stepping into your superpowers. It's simply about reallocating your energy from trying to protect yourself and bringing that energy in so that you can radiate that full brilliance. Well, needless to say, by the end of our session, and my sessions are usually 75 minutes to 90 minutes, by the end of our session, she was really stepping into that energy that was already always available to her. Now she was intrinsically, that the definition of intrinsic is that energy that comes within. They talk about like the muscles and the power that already are part of that muscle, that intrinsic power that your muscle has, that your source has, was now finally radiating. And she was able to connect the dots and see how to bring that out more in her work instead of always being in this reactive protection mode. So my question for you is, can you see where you're putting your energy in this protection mode? Maybe you're comparing yourself to somebody else because you don't think you're good enough, or maybe you're trying to conform and pretend to be something else because it doesn't feel safe enough to be uniquely your own. I want you to get curious where maybe you're putting this wall up unintentionally, that you don't need this protection anymore. How can you reallocate that energy inwards so that you can be that source energy that allows you to take these quantum jumps in your work? So I just wanted to share that. Just the astrology of everything really supports everything. So let's talk about the astrology for the week of January 23rd to 29th, because yes, we have a lot of things going on. On the 23rd, that is Sunday, we still have Venus in retrograde and we still have Mercury in retrograde, but now Mercury is at its midway point of the retrograde cycle, where we call the sun, the conjunction between the sun and Mercury during the retrograde cycle, as a combust. This happens, the sun and Mercury meeting exactly at Aquarius of 3 degrees on January 23rd, happens exactly at 2:28 a.m. Pacific, 5:28 a.m. Eastern, where there is now an illumination about the theme that we have for this Mercury retrograde of rethinking social impact, a full illumination on what you have been rethinking and going over and reorganizing in your mind. So what new emotional knowing and logical understanding do you now have about the future? Mercury is now in the heart of the sun. Your mind and soul are aligned and fully illuminated at this midpoint of the Mercury retrograde cycle. You are halfway done with this cycle. What do you now know? What new perspective and understanding do you have with all that may have gone awry since January 14th when Mercury reversed? You have now an emotional understanding of all that has happened and what needs to change. Now, because of this combust, it's the energy of this illumination can kind of feel overwhelming. It's like this energy that is like an overload of energy, like an electrical jolt. So be cautious on this day if you're traveling. And oh my goodness, I'm saying this for myself because, well, I am traveling that day. I have to take a quick little trip to Hawaii for a little family thing. And of course, I'm traveling during Mercury retrograde. So it can happen. So just take extra time and just be on the lookout for things that are trying to move fast, like there's just an overload of energy coming at you. On January 24th, we have Mars entering Capricorn. So bye-bye, Sagittarius. Mars enters Capricorn at 7:05 p.m. Pacific, 10:05 p.m. Eastern, where the theme for Mars in Capricorn is drive to persevere. What are you committing to through disciplined action? Mars loves being in Capricorn and is exalted in this go and get it sign. Now through March 7th, it's time to harness this willpower on the things that matter to you most. Pour this energy into accomplishing and mastering your expertise and impact. If you have a natal Mars in Capricorn, you have a tremendous drive and focus. Be sure to direct your energy from a sense of self-responsibility and accountability instead of perceived duty and obligations to others in your business. Now, if you have planets, natal planets or angles meaning your rising or your midheaven in Capricorn, as Mars drives through, expect a boost of physical stamina, activating your natal energies over the next 6 weeks. On January 25th, we have a couple of things going on. That's Tuesday. And we have our 4th quarter moon in Scorpio, as well as Mercury retrograde. So going backwards, re-entering Capricorn. So this day of the 25th, with our 4th quarter moon at exactly 5:41 a.m. Pacific, 8:41 a.m. Eastern, the theme is regenerate. That's actually my theme for the entire year, but it's the theme for this 4th quarter Scorpio moon. What will you detox from today? Deep restoration and healing can be a radical act. To completely stop doing and to literally drop all your tasks so you can tune into yourself. To detox from all notifications and busyness. But this is what you need right now with the 4th quarter moon integration phase. If you take even just 24 hours to regenerate, you will feel much more expansive and ready to take on even more of your purpose. The last quarter moon phase is an inner integration phase in our lives and our businesses, a time to cultivate all that we have learned and assess what we want to continue with and what we want to turn back into the earth as nourishment for the seeds we've planted. I love it. So later on that evening at 7:05 p.m. Pacific, 10:05 p.m. Eastern, still on Tuesday, the 25th, Mercury retrograde re-enters Capricorn, where the theme now of Mercury back in Capricorn is practical, sustainable reattunement. So remember, this Mercury retrograde is about rethinking your vision, your social impact of the future. And now going back into Capricorn, it's like, okay, well, we have this like fantastical vision of the future, but we have to make it pragmatic. We have to make it doable. We have to make it be able to work on our physical realm with Capricorn earthiness. So the question that Mercury retrograde while it re-enters Capricorn is, what strategic communications keep you on track for your goals? Now through Valentine's Day on my birthday, February 14th, Mercury will spend its time back in Capricorn, leaving Aquarius while in reverse direction. Back in mid-December of 2021, Mercury spent some time in Capricorn asking you to get strategic about your messaging and sharing and teaching of information to prioritize keeping track of your goals. Now, you've had some innovative perspectives come through since then. So now it's time to weave in your new understanding into your communication strategy so that you can share your vision. Maybe communications and really clarifying your vision statement in your business is one of your strategic, practical ways that you can incorporate this energy in your business. Maybe. Pragmatically potent for late cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. On January 28th, we have Mercury retrograde joining up with Pluto at Capricorn of 26 degrees. Ooh, interesting that this Capricorn of 26 degrees is the degree that Venus stopped when it went backwards. So it's traced, Venus is back at Capricorn 11 degrees by now, but this Capricorn 26 degrees where Pluto is sitting on, where both Mercury and Venus have been dancing at that 26 degree of Capricorn point, you know that the Mercury retrograde and the Venus retrograde are closely interlinked, okay? So this happens at exactly 8:16 p.m. Pacific, 11:16 p.m. Eastern, where your words have power. Take two, part two. So, what do you need to reiterate? Because your words have power, they are potent, right? Look back a month ago, right before New Year's Eve. Mercury and Pluto met at this time, and you had words for saying goodbye to 2021, the things that you just did not want to take with you, and welcoming in 2022. Now that we're a few weeks in, you have an addendum you want to add to your powerful declarations and your potent communications with your rethinking of the future. What do you want to rewrite and reiterate as it comes to what your vision is of that long-term goal? Your words are powerfully honest and transparent at this time. Choose wisely. This will be especially compelling for late cardinal signs of Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Now, Mercury and Pluto will be dancing back together in February when Mercury retrograde now goes forward. It's going to pass by Pluto again for that part 3. So this is a long-term conversation that you have as you are distilling and intensifying your own powerful, potent communications. Remember, your words have power. On January 29th, Venus retrograde stations direct at Capricorn 11 degrees, where Venus is now moving forward. So over this Venus retrograde, you had the chance to really reevaluate what's the most important things in your life to help you accomplish your long-term goals. So the theme for this now moving forward is re-envisioning impactful partnerships. Venus has now come to a complete stop and shifted gears forward. Over the last 6 weeks since December 19th, Venus has given you a chance to deep dive into re-examining your connections and the resources that you need to thrive long term. Your values, while Venus is in Capricorn, is focused on how to thrive through achieving your goals, living up to your own responsibilities and accountability, and seeing yourself as the authority and expert in your business. What has come up for you? What do you now know about the powerful relationships that you need in your business? What about your money, your values, your investments? What do you now know about your accountability and dedication to your values? You now know what needed to change with your values. And over the next month, as Venus traces forward, where that place where she reversed called that shadow zone, you'll notice the echoes of these themes that will give you the strategies on how to move things forward. Venus is now moving forward, but won't leave that shadow zone until March 2nd, where Venus will leave that Capricorn of 26 degrees, where she's going to be saying hello to Pluto once again. All right, luminaries, that is all that I have for right now. Thank you so much for joining me. And if you could do me a huge favor, share these episodes with your business friends, those friends that are looking for deeper meaning, who are astro curious. I know that my work is supposed to reach so many more people, that this work is powerful, and that this work can make our business lives so much easier and in flow. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you love this podcast, please consider doing me a favor and heading over to Apple iTunes and leaving me a rating and review. Your rating and review helps this humble podcast get seen and found by more listeners like you. Please share the love.